Jai Hind everyone, my name is Ankita Rani. I am working as assistant professor in the Department of Computer Science and Engineering at Ajay Kumar Garg Engineering College, Ghaziabad. Today we discuss about the topic important human characteristics in design, and this topic comes under the subject human computer interface, and the subject code is KCS 058. So what are the important human characteristics in design, like in screen design? So first characteristic is perception. Perceptions means we perceive from the environment and we think about that and we take actions on our perception. So perception is our awareness and understanding of the elements and objects of our environment through the physical sensation of our various senses, what we sense through our sixth sense. So this is the condition of the perception. So various senses, like it includes sight, sound, smell and so forth. So perception is influenced in part by experience. So other perceptual characteristics include the following. First characteristics is proximity. Proximity. So similarly, in proximity, this is our first characteristics. In proximity, our eyes and mind see object as belonging together if they are near each other in space. So both our mind and our eyes see the object. So this sense is the proximity of human. Next characteristics is similarity. So in similarity, our eyes and mind see object as belonging together. Similarly, as in proximity, if they share the common visual property such as color, size, shape, brightness and orientation. So this characteristics, like we see the same visual property, like our mind and our eyes see the same color, same size, same shape, then this comes under the category of the similarity. Next characteristic is matching patterns. In matching patterns, we respond similarly to the same shape in different size. Like shape of the shape is same, but they are different in the size. The letter of the alphabet, for example, possess the same meaning regardless of physical size. For example, if we have an alphabet like A, but another alphabet is of different size, like this size is big and this size is small, but they both have the same meaning, but they both are in the different size. So this is called as matching pattern. Next is secondness. So in this, we see an object as having some perfect or simple shape because perfection or simplicity is easier to remember. So in this, we see the object as a simple object or as a perfect object. Next next characteristic is closure. So in this, our perception is synthetic. It establishes meaningful wholes. If something does not quite close itself, such as a circle, square, triangle or word, so we see it as closed anyway. So in this, every object is closer to each other. Next characteristic is unity. So in unity, objects that form closed shapes are perceived as a group. In this, we see an object as a whole group. Next characteristic is continuity. So in continuity, shortened lines may be automatically extended, means everything is go in a continuity, go in a flow, means there is no discontinuity of the object, all objects are continued in a line. Next characteristic is of perception is balance. So in balance, we see desire stabilization or equilibrium in our viewing point. Vertical, horizontal and right angles are the most visually satisfying and easiest to look at. So in balance characteristic, we create some stabilization in every object. All objects are stable to each other and all objects are equilibrium to each other, and vertically, horizontally and right angles are used in the balance characteristics. Next is expectancies. So in this characteristic, perception is also influenced by expectancies. So sometimes we perceive not what is there but what we expect to be there. So in this we talk about our expectation, what the user, what the human will expect. So in this sometimes we perceive not what is there, like what is there we not perceive, but we perceive what we expect, like what we expect we perceive this. So missing a spelling mistake in proofreading something we write is often an example of a perceptual expectancy error. So we see not how a word is spelled, but how we expect to see it is spelled. For example, if there is any word which is wrongly spelled, but we know that this is the wrong spelling of that word, but we expect it to be spelled correct. For example, the word is apple, but the spelling of apple we write like this. So we know the difference in both the words, that this is the right spelling and this is the wrong spelling. So we expect, we perceive that this is the wrong word, but we expected that this word is apple. So this is the example of expectancies. Next characteristic is context. So in context, environment and surroundings also influence individual perception. So in this, like through our environment, through our surroundings, we perceive something, we perceive, for example, two drawn lines of the same length may look the same length or different length depending on the angle of the adjacent lines or what other people have said about the size of the lines. So in context, for example, if we have the two lines of the same size, of same length, but they look different if we see from the different angles and if we see from the different side. So this characteristics comes under the category of the context. So next is signals versus noise. So in this, our sensing mechanism are bombarded by many stimuli, some of which are important and some of which are not. So in this, we think about our sensing capacity, our sensing characteristics and our noise. So important stimuli are called signals. Those that are not important or unwanted are called noise. For example, if we transfer any data from one signal to another, from one system to the another system, but they create the noise interference. So noise are that thing which is not important and which are unwanted thing. So this is called as noise, like unwanted or irrelevant information. Noise are unwanted data. So signals are more quickly comprehended if they are easily distinguishable from noise in our sensory environment. So with the help of the signal, we send some information, we transfer some information from one point to the another point, from one system to the another system. So noise interferes with the perception of signals to the extent that they are similar to one another. So noise can even mask a critical signal. So in signals, noise interference in the perceptions. So for example, if the human perceived something about the signals, so through noise interference, the human cannot perceive the environment. So the goal in design is to allow screen element to easily assume the quality of signal or noise. So in screen design, in screen element, goal is to easily assume the quality of the signal or noise. So in human characteristics, which is called perception in design, the goal of design is to assume the quality of the signal or noise. So as the need and task of the user change from moment to moment. So next characteristic is, after the perception, the next characteristics in human characteristic is memory. So memory is viewed as consisting of two components, long term and short term memory. So there are basically two types of memory. First is long term memory and second is short term memory. So short term memory also called as working memory. So short term memory or working memory receives information from either the senses or long term memory, but usually cannot receive both at once, the senses being processed separately. Within short term memory, a limited amount of information processing takes place. So as the name suggests, short term means the memory is for some time, not for the long time. So in this, the amount of information is also a limited in short term memory, but usually we cannot receive the both, the long term memory or the senses. So also called as short term memory, also called as working memory. So short term memory is easily overloaded because this memory is for sometimes is for the short time. So it is highly susceptible to the interference of such distracting tasks as thinking, reciting or listening. So like distracting tasks such as thinking, reciting, listening. So with the help of this task, short-term memory is easily distracted. So which are constantly erasing and overwriting it. In short-term memory, we constantly erase the memory, we constantly overwrite the memory. So remembering a telephone number long enough to complete the dialing operation taxes the memory of many people. So for example, if we're talking about the phone number of any person, they come under the long term memory, because sometimes we remember the phone number of our parents, of our childs, of our family member for a long time. Means the telephone number is a that type of memory which we remains in our long term memory. So this comes under the long term memory. So long-term memory contains the knowledge we possess. Information received in short-term memory is transferred to it and encoded within it, a process we call learning. Sometimes the amount of information which is in short-term memory is transferred to the in long-term memory, because long-term memory contains the knowledge we possess. In long-term memory, the amount of information is large, and in long-term memory, the amount of information, the memory, the time span of the information is long because it is the long-term memory. And in this, we continuously learn the process, we continuously learn, remember the memory, remember the information. So this all things are happen in long term memory. So basically long term memory is a complex process requiring some effort on our part, because in long term memory we have to remember more information as compared to the short term memory. So the learning process is improved if the information being transferred from short-term memory has a structured and is meaningful and familiar. So learning process is improved. Learning process of long-term memory is improved if short-term memory has some structure. So with the help of this structure, the user can easily learn the short-term memory, easily learn the process or easily learn the information. So learning is also improved through repetition. Learning is also improved through repetition. Repetition means we continuously repeat some information, we continuously learn some information. So with the process of the repetition, learning can also improve. Next is short-term memory. So in short-term memory, with its distinct limitations, long-term memory capacity is thought to be unlimited. So short-term memories have some distinct limitations, means in this memory is limited, but in long-term memory is unlimited, because the capacity of the long-term memory is unlimited. So in short-term memory capacity is limited, but in long-term memory capacity is unlimited, because the amount of information in this has large amount of information, but in short term memory the amount of information is small. Next characteristics after the memory is sensory storage. So in sensory storage is the buffer where the automatic processing of information collected from our senses takes place. So in sensory storage, the information which is senses through the environment, the user can senses from the environment. So this information is stored as a buffer in sensory storage. So they automatically process the information from our senses, from the senses of environment. So it is an unconscious process because large, attentive to the environment, and it is quick to detect changes and constantly being replaced by newly gathered stimuli. So in sensory storage, we continuously collect the information from the environment, we senses from the environment, all information are collected in this storage, in this buffer. So in a sense, it acts like radar, constantly scanning the environment for things that are important to pass on to higher memory. So sometimes in a sensory storage, the information which is collected, sometimes it acts like a radar and it's constantly scanning the environment, constantly sensing the environment for things, and sometimes these things are also stored in the higher memory. So though seemingly overwhelmed at a time by noise, it can occasionally detect or detect and also a tree through a forest. So one good example is what is sometimes called like cocktail party effect. So in cocktail party effect, have you ever been at a party when across the room, though the din of voices sometimes mentions your name and you hear it. So in this, in our mind we constantly think about that something is going to happen. We mentions our name, your radar was functioning. So in this, we collectively we collect information as a buffer in our senses and what we senses through the environment. So next characteristic is visual acuity. In visual acuity, the capacity of the eye to resolve details is called visual acuity. Like what we see through our eyes, what visually we see. When the user, when the human can see from our eyes, they can absorb that information, they can absorb that environment through our eyes in our mind. So this process is called as visual acuity. Sometimes we remember the thing what we see that time, what we see on that place. So we remember that thing from our eyes. So it is the phenomenon that result in an object becoming more distinct as we turn our eyes toward it and rapidly losing distinctness as we turn our eyes away. Sometimes we see an object, we see some activity, but at the same time we when our eyes are away, then we simply losing the distinctness. So that is as the visual angle from the point of fixation increases. So it has been shown that relative visual acuity is approximately half at a distance of 2.5 degree from the point of eye fixation. So this point, like visual activity is approximately half at a distance of 2.5 degree from the point of eye fixation. This concept is given by the Boma in 1970. So this is the concept of Boma. So patterns for fill in areas of screens like bar, circle and so on must be carefully chosen to avoid this visual distraction. For example, if we have some pattern like we have to fill this area, so this is the process of distracting the user, like user can easily simply distract. So by circle like this must be carefully chosen to avoid this visual distraction. So if we do these activities like circles, bars, so with the help of this activity we can avoid our visual distraction. Next activity is foveal and peripheral vision. So in foveal and peripheral vision, basically foveal vision is used to focus directly on something, and peripheral vision senses anything in the area surrounding the location we are looking at. So foveal vision, like on something, anything like any object. So if we are focusing on any object, then this vision is called as the foveal vision. And if we senses something in the environment, or if we are looking something at the location on the in the surroundings, so this vision is called as the peripheral vision. But what is there cannot be clearly resolved because of the limitations in visual acuity just described. So foveal and peripheral vision maintain at the same time a cooperative and a competitive relationship. Foveal and peripheral vision has some cooperative relationship and has some competitive relationship, because in foveal vision we just directly focus on the object, but in peripheral vision we basically senses through the environment or senses through the location, through the surroundings. So peripheral vision can aid our visual search but can also be distracting. In its competitive nature, peripheral vision can compete with foveal vision for attention. So peripheral vision wants some more attention as compared to the foveal vision. So what is sensed in the periphery is passed on to our information processing system along with the what is actively being viewed foveal. It is in a sense visual noise. So the process is like that what we see through the environment, what we sense through the environment, through the location, through the surrounding, this is transferred in our mind as a in our system as an information processing system. So the user can process this information, and similarly in a sense what is in foveal vision, we just see the object. So they both are the competitive to each other, foveal vision and peripheral vision. Next characteristic is information processing. Information processing is how we process our information. The information is collected through sensing through the environment, from the surrounding, from the locations. From that we collect our information and stored as a buffer through the sensory storage. So the information that our senses collect that is deemed important enough to do something about then has to be processed in some meaningful way. So the information is processed in a meaningful way means the information which is collected has some meaning, has some relevant information, irrelevant information. There are two levels of information processing. So one level, the highest level, is identified with consciousness and working memory. So basically there are the two levels of information processing. One level is the highest level. One level is the highest level, and this level is identified with the consciousness and working memory. It is limited, slow and sequential, and is used for reading and understanding. So both level function simultaneously. The higher level performing reasoning and problem solving, the lower level perceiving the physical form of information sensed. So basically there are the two types of level, highest level and low level. In highest level, we basically focus on the reasoning, problem solving, the consciousness, the working memory, what we see through the so on the some reasoning ability of the person. But in the lower level, the information processing is what we see, what we perceived from the environment in the physical form of information sensed. Next characteristic is mental models. So a mental model is simply an internal representation of person's current understanding of something. Like mentally what we think about some information, what mentally have what our understanding of something. So usually a person cannot describe this mental mode and most often is unaware it even exists. So mental models also enable a person to predict the actions necessary to do things if the action has been forgotten or has not yet been encountered. So in mental model, we basically work on the mental, internal representation of the person current understanding. Next is the movement control. Next characteristics is movement control. So in this, once data has been perceived and an appropriate action decided upon, a response must be made. In many cases, the response is a movement. Firstly, if you collect the information from the environment, so after that a response is made and the response is called as movement. So in computer system, movement includes such activities as pressing keyboard keys, moving the moving the screen pointer by pushing a mouse or rotating a trackball or clicking a mouse button. So these all are the movement controls. So so there is a law called Fitts law. In this law, the time to acquire a target is a function of the distance and size of the target. So when we are talking about the movement, so for the movement there is a law called Fitts law. In this law, uh, it is the time between the target, between the object and size of the target. This is the distance. Next characteristic is learning. So learning is the process of encoding in long-term memory information that is contained in the short-term memory. So basically in learning is a process in which the information in short-term memory is encoded in a long-term memory. So it is a complex process requiring some effort on our part. So learning can be enhanced if it allows skills acquired in one situation to be used. It provides complete and prompt feedback. If it is phased, that is, it requires a person to know the information needed at that stage of the learning process. So these all are the characteristics of the learning process. Next is skills. So the goal of human performance is to perform skillfully. So the performance is better when we performed skillfully. So it is characterized by consistency and economy of effort. Economy of effort is achieved by establishing a work pace that represent optimum efficiency. Like economy of effort means we have to work in an optimized manner. So skills are hierarchical in nature and many basic skill may be integrated to form increasingly complex ones. So low order skills tend to become routine and may drop out of consciousness. So the main goal of the skill is that the user can perform the task skillfully. Next human characteristic is individual differences. So in reality there is no average user. Individual differences complicate design because design must permit pupil with widely varying characteristics to satisfactorily and comfortably learn the task or job or use the website. But technology now offers the possibility for offering the jobs to the specific need of pupil with varying and changing learning or skill levels. So thank you student. These are the characteristics of the human characteristics in design. Thank you.